not every day we get to speak to a state senator, so it's very exciting. And I'm also just personally super interested in to see how we can get some climate progress happening in places that are not super blue. And also the senator has a super interesting, she's got a lot of jobs, and maybe she'll tell you a bit about those. Okay, without further ado.
Yeah, thanks, Juan Pablo. And nice to meet everybody. As Juan Pablo mentioned, I'm really hoping that this can be a interactive Q&A type of conversation. And if there is one ideal takeaway from today's call, is that I really want folks to not sleep on the South in terms of opportunities for progress, even if they might look a little different or have to take somewhat of a different pathway to get there. I think that there is a lot of good room for great opportunities, particularly as we look at local level municipalities, as we look at the deployment of the Inflation Reduction Act funds, but also as we look at the states. So I'm happy to share just my perspective of legislating. But before that, I'll tell you just a little bit more about me. So again, my name is DeAndrea Salvador. I represent Senate District 39 in the North Carolina State Senate. So that's Charlotte area, one of 50 senators. And then we have 120 members of our House of Representatives. I'm currently in my second term and on re-election for my third term. So I've been serving for about 4 years now. North Carolina is a quote unquote part-time legislature, which essentially means very low pay, but still some pretty frequent hours. So outside of doing my Senate work, I do also work at a startup. And in addition to that, I am also in school. But one of the most interesting things that I think I found coming into serving in the General Assembly just really was the amount of authority and power that is held at the state level. And this is true in North Carolina, but it's true also in so many other states. So North Carolina essentially has like a Dillon rule state where our state legislature can very quickly jump in and circumvent local level policy ordinances, things of that sort. So in addition to doing things such as putting out legislation that may impact our investor-owned utility, which is a monopoly in the state, there also is instances where we may see encroachments of local governments and what they might be able to do, essentially led at the state level. And so that was one of the big reasons why I wanted to come to the General Assembly. That, and of course, ending gerrymandering is very big for me. I just think it works much better when we are not carving, slicing, and dicing maps to get a particular outcome for particular candidates. It really should be representative democracy such that people are choosing their elected officials and not the other way around. So that is something that we are continuing to work and fight on. Just talking a little bit about the makeup of our state. So North Carolina also, when you look electorally, has a very interesting makeup in that we have a Democratic governor. We also have went for Trump in 2016 as well as 2020. However, that race was down to a margin of about 69,000 or 70,000 votes. So it's a very slim margin. And then when you look through our Council of State, it does ebb and flow back and forth. So we have, for instance, a Democratic Secretary of State and Attorney General, but Republican Lieutenant Governor, as well as state treasurer. So I think it shows that it kind of speaks to also the growing trend that our number one demographic of voters are unaffiliated voters, many of which do lean Democratic at a growing rate. So we have a state that, despite having a super minority of Democratic representation in the House and Senate right now, which we're working to circumvent, there is still a huge swath of interest and perspectives when it comes to polling and policy, specifically when it comes to clean energy. Just to use a source that my colleagues across the aisle like to use. There is a Conservatives for Clean Energy group, and their polling saw that the vast majority of North Carolinians, despite their political ideology, supported climate and supported things such as like solar and even wind, especially once they saw the economic development impacts. And so I think what we sometimes have to battle is getting ahead of and in front of any potential misinformation or disinformation, such that we can have true substantive conversations. So it certainly is difficult and different having to legislate in the superminority versus the minority. I'll be candid and clear and say when it was not a superminority, there certainly were additional inroads in negotiating to find getting closer towards bipartisan types of agreements. But even in spite of that, I think when there are strong coalitions of folks that can come together, it can slow down things that perhaps the individuals in the climate movement may find can hurt the industry. One specific example was the recent initial legislation for solar decommissioning. When that legislation was initially being drafted, the solar industry was quite concerned because North Carolina has had a strong history of being among the top 5 states for solar development. However, the way that decommissioning was written, the potential risk for salvage value, some of the financing mechanisms to kind of hold the money in accounts, they thought would be a huge hindrance. And so despite being in a super minority, the coalition of folks talked to not only individuals in my party, but also Republicans as well, to find a consensus and agreement to make sure that that concept can move forward without hindering the industry. So I'm really excited to chat today and share maybe a little bit of a deeper look and take into what are a few things that we've seen so far, and then also ask people questions about generally just how, answer any questions about generally how the process works.